Occasionally you'll hear me talk about a classic move. And when I say that, I'm referring to a move that we see a lot. And it just has a little bit different conditions to it. But there are some key elements that repeat themselves time and time again. And this is I've got a number of examples that will show you what I'm referring to as a classic move. In this case, it's a downtrend, and the move is when trend red, for the first time, it goes down, and for the first time, it comes back up. And that is almost always when we're dealing with trend blue highest. In other words, blue is going down and above zero normally. Over on this side here, we see that zip red is highest, or zip yellow is highest and going down, which is classic. With the power yellow, the twin yellow twins are both going down, and that's just a classic downtrend that you can long as they both stay highest and are going down, you can stick with it. And you got several gaps in here that you could have taken advantage of. So it's a real nice move, and there are a lot of them like this. This one here happens to be another one, and I'll show you that one. But normally what I see is trend yellow, pink, and blue above zero when the red comes up. And it's just barely under zero, and so especially when you have a gap up like this, it would qualify as a next day down real easily, because it's gapping up into the yellow and zero at the same time. And over on the other charts, we have examples of that. Happens to be right here, and we have examples where the swing pink and the swing Zion are, I'm going to take and highlight this with a vertical line. Swing pink and swing Zion are both crossed over zero, but they're butting up against the swing blue and swing green line. Also, your deep cycle indicator, swing gray, has been down now for several days, and in all likelihood will continue down. You have what is identified, or looks like, I should say, a red peak. That's zip red over 50 going up, and the basic requirement is that zip yellow will be under 50 and going down. In this case here, zip yellow is at 66 and zip red is at 73. And you can, when you've heard me before talk about the great flexibility that those two patterns have, red peaks and red spikes, you can see this here is a classic example of that. And in this particular case, we're fighting against a zip Zion lowest, but zip Zion has continually gone down on every single move for the last 7 or 8 days. And so unless we can see something that's driving it, we might not be interested. We also see a great separation between zip yellow and zip blue, and at some point they have to pull back together. We're not exactly sure when that might be, but keep in mind your swing gray is going down. Red and green, I think, or green especially, is going down. Red's just about going down. Yep, red's going down and green's going down in the zip line. And then, of course, your trend trio's already crossed under zero on the trend chart, so that's just like an automatic. But the bulls have just pushed it up one last time before the crash. And so yellow and pink and blue over here on this green line are under zero, and in all likelihood will go down. Power Zion has uptouched the green line, so you can see This one here is a really strong indication as well. On this example here, this one here is the lines are under 0, but some key factors occur in this particular one, and that is not only does trend red butt up against trend blue, but it crosses over green, and there's more impact to a reversal when it crosses over the green. I may have shown that to you on other occasions. It works especially well when you get a gap up and red crosses over green and down touches somewhere above blue, and they're all above 0 at that point. Over on these charts, the zip Zion is highest and going down, and we all know that that's a classic downtrend, as has been occurring for 4 or 5 days before we get to this vertical green line. But what's a good indication here of a big move is when zip pink is up 2 days and zip Zion is down 2 days. And that really, when you get divergence going 2 full days like that, you end up with 2 tiny green candles, the doji candles. And you can't always, some people swear by doji candles, but you can't do that. You have to verify it with the indicators. You have to see the divergence. You have to see the patterns. Like the zip Zion going down is an extra pattern in the whole situation that tells us that we're going to be going further down. But yet we had 2 green candles. So what happened, the bulls tried to push it up and got nowhere in this example because there's just too much force going on in the form of going down. And in the power line, the key thing that I'll have you notice in the power chart is that all your lines are under 0. And that's indicative of a downtrend. When all the lines are above 0, things may not line up in the way of location or pattern shapes in the proximity groups, especially if you're looking at gaps. But they do. But when they are traveling flat and low like this under 0, there's a good chance that things are going to go south. In the next example I've got, this is really one of them that I look at and I think this is a classic. And it's classic for a couple of reasons. It's come back up. Look at where the candles are. We have a price going back up. The bulls have pushed it up one last day again, but we're in that trend blue highest format. All the fast lines, the gray, green, and red in the trend chart are down underneath, and they're all underneath the pink at that point. But we also have the power yellow over on our highest on the power chart, and that's not necessarily true with the zip yellow, but it's very close. We just simply have a spike, or excuse me, a peak in the zip red. And again, there's a zip red at 92 and a zip yellow at 82. So there's a real high red peak, and it still goes down the next day. And that's an obvious. There's just obvious other things in the swing chart. We have swing gray, which has popped out its nose up above the main lines, and that would be the wide red and green lines, and it is above 0. Swing pink is under 0, but swing pink has uptouched the 0 line as well, just a little bit over the green line. And when Zion is above and pink is under, that condition is divergent in itself. They should really be on the same side of the 0 line. And so this is a classic example. Red does not penetrate up above any of the lines, but it does go up, and it's between the 0 and the yellow, so it's kind of like a uptouch yellow condition. but we do have a green candle today, and it's not as high as 2 and 3 days ago, which makes it a lower high, which constitutes for the definition of a downtrend. And you always deal with the first go up of the trend red. You don't do the second, or don't deal with the second or after that. And you like to deal with it when trend blue is highest. That also makes the trio above zero when I say that. So keep that keep that in mind when you think about it. In the Power Zion chart or line down here, we have Power Zion that is in basically a low angle up. I sometimes call them a post. When you have low angle ups, they go down. When the Zion runs parallel with the orange, and it's not quite parallel, but it's really close enough. When you look at it like that, it's running parallel with it. But when it's running parallel, look that there's an increased probability that it's going down. Whenever you have a flat line running on another line, obviously there's other factors involved too, but it's gone up. Zion has gone up. It couldn't even get past the orange line, and now it's going back down again. So, and in fact, you have power white at 124 and power white at 123. Power white is just in a low angle down there and almost looks flat. But that one's a real good example as well. And then this example here is another classic. The red is the trend red is up touching the pink in the first move as it goes up. After it comes down and crosses through the lines, then it goes back up and hits the trend pink. Green comes down underneath the blue, and again, blue is highest. That's one of the key things in this classic move that I see. We happen to have a red candle on this example, and that is all the more information or supporting evidence to tell us that the move is going down next day. And we can see that again over in the swing and the Zion, the swing Zion and the swing pink lines. We have a BOC pattern. It's 2 days down, and actually it's 2 days down and 1 day up. And this is a BOC pattern, but I have a tendency to think of it as a high M pattern. If I look at a pattern that is a BOC pattern and it's down, up, up, then I think of that as a BOC pattern. Now, that's just a mental preference that I think of, but things have a tendency to reflect. How do I say this? More accurately, at least mentally speaking, when I think of it that way. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, and you may or may not want to do that, but it's in other situations I would define the swing Zion over here as a 2-day BOC pattern, but it's 2 days down before the BOC, not 2 days up after the BOC. So again, another classic move. This time you have a really big red candle, and one of the reasons is that trend red up-touched the pink line in the trend trio. Gray is also up just a little bit over yellow, so it probably qualifies as an up-touch pink. And then, of course, you have an excellent pattern in the power chart with all five. The power five, actually, excuse me, all six. The power six is all above the orange line. Every single one of them. And you have some divergence with power pink up, blue down, and that oftentimes is enough. Just to run a scan with pink up and blue down, or the other way around, you can come up with all kinds of good opportunities to invest in the next day. So The following one, whoops, wrong way. This one here again is another classic. It started out a little soon, but it's still the red line in the trend red is riding on top of the blue line, and it's going up. You've got divergence with the gray line. It's uncanny sometimes how the gray line points in the direction of the trend. When red and gray are divergent, the trend red line points in the direction of the movement. And at this point here, you do not have the blue line. This has happened so soon. The trio is still climbing. And you can see down here in the power red that you're in a lower, you're in a lower high in the power red chart. You're also, the same is true in the trend red, but power red is highest, whereas trend red is not. And again, over in the swing chart, we have the same thing. Swing Zion is above zero, swing pink is under zero, and look at the swing gray line is running real low. That means that unless something happens, it's going to go into a downtrend. And because swing gray right there is 0.97, so it's not even at 1. Then of course in the zip chart we have the classic zip gray is highest, and look at it, runs pretty flat the next day, and you get a red little doji candle the next day, and then after that it starts down. And then by the time you would get to here, making a decision this day is real easy because of your trend red and, your zip red and gray are both down, yellow, blue are down, green is down. I mean, everything, pink is down. Everything in the zip chart is heading down. And then you don't know this yet, but you're on the peak of the swing gray line, which is the deep cycle indicator. So we know that the high cycle has been reached right here, and will be going down the next day. Then this last one, this is one where the red sticks its nose out up over the blue line. Green is touching the blue line. Gray is hitting the pink line. And so we'll get should get a really, you got a triple UpTouch. We should get a really nice down the next day. We have a little head and shoulders pattern in the power pink. Pink is highest at this point, which is good. And look at how low blue went. Pink went up and blue went almost flat like a post. And that post sign, that blue didn't have enough energy in its forces to keep going up. It goes sideways, and that's an automatic. When you see those posts, when one pair, when the pink and blue are paired together, when one goes up and the other one does not, it's just a classic for a downtrend. Power Zion is just repeats that. We're on a nice low angle down post or top. And so keep in mind, what do you got? You got power blue up and power Zion down. It's another case of divergence. Not necessarily that they are paired, but when I talk about that, what I'm talking about is you got divergence on the same chart. And that's an important factor, because of the lines that were created and incorporated onto specific charts, when they are, divergent to each other, it's more effective, or how do I say this? It most of the time it's more effective in identifying the cycle movement. When we talk about divergence, like for example in my favorite divergent pair, trend red and power red, when those two are divergent, either just in the line or in a pattern, like a BOC pattern, one's a BOC higher, the other one's a BOC lower, or you can get them in high M patterns or right leg W patterns, 2-3 day differences, 4 day differences. When those patterns are divergent as well, then you can get some really big movements. And I think it's because of the association. I'm thinking of the big three, the trend red, the power red, and the swing Zion. Those are the big three. When they're all down in a BOC pattern and all lowest, you get a really nice uptrend, typically. And you might have one day down in between if you get a red peak in there or something like that. But usually that's a pretty strong movement. And what I'm leading to is that each of those three, trend red, power red, and swing Zion, are tracking the forces that they track within the movement. When all three of them are doing the same thing at the same time, then all of those forces combined are tracking the same way. And when that happens, then we get stronger movements. And so the correlation between whatever those powers are between trend red and power red, when those two are divergent, you get some really nice reactions. So this is the last one that I wanted to show you. In this case here, I'll also point out that red went up twice before we hit the peak. The first time red was up touching yellow and green was down touching pink. And so that would have been, you got to ask yourself what's happening there, because you got two opposing forces right in the trend chart. And as it turns out, pink overrides, and the green bounced off. The red continued through, and because of that green bounce off the pink, you get a nice big green candle. Again, the best line for any down touches or up touches to occur to achieve the biggest candle is to bounce off the trend pink line. But remember, you want to bounce off like right over here. You want to bounce off at least on the top, or you want to bounce off when the blue is going up. If you're going to bounce off and hit the pink line when you're going down over here, the reaction is like a reflection rather than a bounce back. And so it reflects off the pink going down and just kind of sometimes just bounces lower. So it can bounce off the top like it does right here, or it can the trend red can bounce into, like in the case of a next day gap up, it bounces into the blue and then gaps up or goes up. And of course, when it's like this, the red has stuck its nose out up above the blue. We have a triple up touch. We have power pink actually like I mentioned, in a little head and shoulders pattern. All of that stuff with the flat tops, the posts. You got zip yellow highest over here. I mean, and power yellow is right next to the pink. I mean, those two on that day qualify as both highest. Yellow, I say that simply because yellow is so high and close to pink, even though technically it's not highest. And then then the next day, everything is highest. And for 4 or 5 days, you get a couple of gap days in there. For 4 or 5 days, she goes down really nice. So that's some ideas that I have on the excuse me, I had something on my lip. Those are the things that I had on that video. They're classic in nature, and as a result, they are repeatable, they are recognizable, and we can see them coming and identify them a lot. You just need to watch that the trend blue line and the fact that it's highest. That's one of the key factors to it. So have fun trading. I can't overemphasize that. You gotta have fun what you're doing. I've mentioned it before. I sold real estate for several decades, and developed for a couple of decades, and it was exciting. It was fun. And this is fun. But you know what? When I started out in 2007 trading stocks, I was not having fun. I was inconsistent. I was horribly inconsistent. I didn't know what the problem was. It was like so many things that we strive to, we get started with, or we initiate. There's a learning curve to it. And trading stocks is, very complex. It's not easy. But when you have a system like this where you can put on the eyeglasses of the sensitive indicators and identify with trading only high probability trades like we do because of the patterns and verifying the conditions and using the signal, whatever signal it is for the specific pattern, to enter or exit the trade, the profit margins increase substantially. I mean, if you only gain an extra 1% each time you do a trade, that's phenomenal. And people lose a lot of profit not knowing or not having signals. They see a trend, but they get out too early or they get out too late, and they burn some of their profit. And so there's a formula, and if you run through all the parts of the formula, you'll have great success. But minus one of those important parts, and you can really bite into your bottom line. So we do have the greatest system on the planet. I've repeated that many times, and I'm excited about it. And I know you'll see what we've got. You might not be interested, but I encourage you to try it out at least for a few months if you're, tossing it around. Because once you get into it and once you see it, it's like telling somebody that these indicators are fantastic. If you've never experienced the use of the indicators and see what they do, you don't know what the reality is when somebody says they're fantastic. And that's one big difference. So have fun whatever you do.